Hey, all work, no pleasure. I ain't here to make friends, big stepper. Hey, bad guy, Heath Ledger. Ready for whatever, I'll be front and center. Don't fly too close to the sun, your body chopped up by propellers. Came in arrogant, but left out in a stretcher. The comparison, y'all know y'all couldn't replicate it. Chilling in the desert, I'm good under pressure. Stick around when we hold it down, look at what we found.
Welcome to the official podcast of PHP Architect. Join us to listen to the latest news and tech talk from our conferences, the magazine, and wider PHP community.
You're listening to the official podcast of PHP Architect. This is episode 2025.03.06, and I am your host, Eric Van Johnson, and with me, as always, is John Cogden.
Hello. Another week. Let's do it.
This podcast focuses on all things PHP and web development. We also touch on the larger PHP community and the general life of being a developer. And of course, we'll touch on and talk about our company, PHP Architect, the magazine, and our conference. Maybe even a book today. I don't know. We record every week on Thursday around 3 p.m. Pacific time. The podcast is made a little better thanks to our partners over at Honey Badger. Honey Badger helps you deploy with confidence and be your team's DevOps hero by combining error, uptime, and performance monitoring in one simple platform. It's free to get started, and setup only takes a few minutes. Be the hero your team needs. Suit up at honeybadger.io. Sorry, Honey Badger, but we will talk more about Honey Badger a little later. If you do not happen to watch the live stream and you only listen to the audio version, we'd love to have you join us live. And you can do that by subscribing to our YouTube channel and then hitting the bell to get notified over at youtube.com/PHP Architect. You may be asking yourself, but Eric, why do I care about joining the live show when I can listen to the cleaned up and crystal clear audio version? And you would have a good point. But you can also help make the show a little better by joining us in our Discord, which is a fantastic community over at discord.phparch.com. You can participate in the show, contribute back to whatever we're talking about, give us ideas of things to discuss, because sometimes we just sit around and just stare at each other. And even suggest titles, which I have not been actually adding titles. I have to admit, the title suggestion quality has dipped a little bit. Not calling out any names. I understand, but I'm just saying it's dipped a little bit. Besides that, let's get on with the show. Hey,
Let's do it. Hi.
Hey.
That was a great intro outside of fumbling on the honey badger read.
Yeah, did I fumble or did I draw attention to honey badger? See, you got to think. We're playing three-dimensional chess here, John.
I'm not very good at three-dimensional chess.
Yeah. I'm not good at chess at all. Jeez. What you been up to?
Same old. Working. Getting lots of stuff done. Been a good day. Spent hours on the phone this morning.
Hours.
Did something I haven't done in a long time, which is actually pair coding with somebody, and it was good.
Any particular problem you guys were solving? Anything you discuss?
Sure. The interesting thing is, it was a ticket with somebody saying, hey, when I set up my phone system to dial in this manner, so call comes into them and they say, hey, if somebody presses 4, forward it to my cell phone, as an example.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't working. Just flat out, you hit 4 and it just hung up. No rhyme or reason. Just no, you don't. You really didn't want to call that person on their cell phone. Just hang up on them. I was flabbergasted as what was happening, because this whole feature of call in, press X to do something is relatively new within the past couple of years. So I've been wanting to teach another developer the phone system and how it works so that, reduce the bust factor. So we jump on, we start diagnosing it, and it actually uncovered a whole separate issue, which was good. But this goes back to the phone system the whole thing was originally written for outbound calling. And then every time we've added a new feature, instead of trying to refactor so that all the dial paths go down the same route, it'd be like, oh, you want to dial? Go dial over here. Oh, you want to do this kind of dial? Go dial over here. And with that, if you don't know Asterisk, it's really hard to explain what's happening, but it's just different code paths. And we recently went with a carrier that says, we need this information when you call. So if you go down this call path, everything worked fine because that was what was tested when the new carrier was added. But the team that added the carrier doesn't know all the ways the phone system works now, because we're doing so many different types of dialing. So it turns out this one path didn't send the data that was required to make phone calls over that carrier. Once I figured out what was happening, it was an easy fix. But I'm happy it happened, because it turns out inbound calls from that carrier, which is new to us because, we just started using the carrier, were now being routed to both of our environments, and it was only supposed to be routed to one. The funny thing is, when I talked to the person responsible for that, they linked to a PR that I did, almost like they were blaming me for the issue. I'm like, yeah, my change in here only said, hey, only use valid data within the past 5 minutes instead of everything, right? Yeah. It's just, it was nobody's fault per se. It was just this is new to us. It's a new way of doing this thing, and we didn't think about all of the different paths. So
fun stuff.
It is.
Hey, Woods, Jeffrey, Sarah, thank you for joining us in our Discord. Sarah, I have not spoken to you in a while. I don't believe I saw your ticket come in yet for tech. I'm not trying to pressure you. I'm not trying to call you out. I'm just letting everybody know you have not bought your ticket to tech yet.
And I think you know why, mister, but we won't talk about that right now.
That's right. I might actually know why.
Unless they're going to see it. unless we get the okay. So, but yeah, so on the phone for hours today, dealing with multiple tickets, doing pair coding. It was nice. Working with not a new developer, but somebody I haven't worked closely with for a long time. So just nice hanging out, chatting.
Yeah.
Yep. There you go. Sorry, Sarah.
Audio listeners, you got to come watch the live show because
No, we could talk about it. Sarah Goldman,
yeah.
friend of the show, is on the hunt for a new
acquaintance of the show. I'm not sure about friend. We'll say acquaintance of the.
It is on the hunt for their next gig. If you are interested in hiring Sarah, please reach out to her on LinkedIn. There you go.
Sarah has done a tremendous amount for PHP, the language internals. So I have a feeling she knows what she's talking about, especially when she's talking C.
Yeah.
See?
C.
Yes.
I see. Yes. C. C++. Something like that.
I'm sorry you haven't paired programmed in a while. I thought we had paired programmed a couple days ago, but I guess that was just something different. I must be thinking of something different. You helped us with an issue, kind of a pain in the ass issue. Do you care explaining to me, like I'm a 5-year-old, why what you suggested? Well, so what we were trying to accomplish is we had a very long and complex select statement that we were trying to perform, and every time we touched it to try to improve it, we'd get a little improvement, but it was like one of these 1 step forward, 3 steps back scenarios. So it was kind of a pain in the ass, and kept going through it. So, and there's no eloquent involved. There's no.
It's a raw query.
Right, it's a raw query. No doctrine, nothing like that.
So I actually blogged about this, and the only reason I haven't published it yet is 1, I wanted to show you, and 2, I was trying to find a way to take this big query and put it in a box that or you need to expand or something, and I haven't figured that out. But I wanted to talk about it.
Before you move forward, I assume you blogged about it on PHP Architect, but you haven't released it yet.
Correct.
Good.
That is correct.
Good to hear. Okay.
Yeah. So yeah, really long query, a couple of unions in there, and in some of the worst cases, it was taking 1.5 minutes plus to run. And Eric and another developer brought me in and was, trying to ask me if I could help optimize the query. And I started looking at it. And the first thing I did was run explain on it. And as I'm going through the explain, I could see, we're pulling some 45 or 90 million records in one spot.
So if I can interject here really quick, explain is the one thing I always forget to reach for. And it's so easy. If you are not familiar with how to use explain with your SQL commands, it's very simple. You basically add it to the beginning of your SQL command, and then it shows you where bottlenecks are, like where not bottlenecks, but where it's pulling a lot of records or things like that. So look into explain. Mefford, I'll find a link. I'm sure there's a posting out there, and I'll add it to the show notes if you're listening to the audio podcast to look up later.
Yeah, it does. It's such a great tool. It tells you what indexes it would consider using, which indexes that it thinks it's going to use for that query. And then the most important is, I think, the cardinality, or the number of rows that it's probably going to have to scan to get there. And because it was a union, after I did that and saw it was pulling 45 million records, I then started breaking the query up, and I took the first part of the query, ran explain against it, and it looked very clean. A lot of ones pulling. Each table was related to the other table with just one record, which is what you want to see for the most part. I then took the second half of the union, did the same thing, and that's where the 45 million records was. And just being around database queries a lot and going through optimization techniques in the past, the thing that stuck out to me was an or in the where clause. And when you're writing, when you're first developing an application, it's so easy to say this or that.
Mm-hmm.
You start out with 10, 20 records. Your query's fast. You grow a couple thousand records. It's still fast enough. 45, 90 million records later, an or is going to really hurt. So the idea that I had was just run these queries separately, without the or, and then use PHP to bring all the data together, clean up the duplicates, whatever the case may be.
Right.
The other option, do another union and basically do the same thing without the or, just breaking those things up into two queries. No fully right or wrong answer. I guess it would depend on how many records are being returned, especially if you're going to end up returning them twice. But that was the key for me, seeing that or in the where clause. Let's see if that will speed it up. As soon as I commented out either side of it, it was running in less than a second. So, you figure you'd run two queries at a second each. 2 seconds is way better than a minute and a half.
Yeah, exactly.
I know you got before I started looking into it, your idea was to basically cache that data or project that data so that we weren't doing this whole query in real time, which works, but then you have the downside of it not being real time. Is that a big deal? I don't know.
Right. Yeah. We have with this one particular database, just in general, we have a monumental task ahead of us where we just need to do some housekeeping. There's just legacy data in there. When I say legacy data, I mean like our client has customers in there who haven't been customers in a decade, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so the customer has it just spreads out. I mean, it's not just a single customer record. That customer can have thousands of records associated to them, and everything just continues to grow. So we keep talking about how to best kind of go through there.
Yeah, there should be a data retention policy that they have.
Mm-hmm.
Once your client account is inactive for X amount of time, we either purge it or export it to another database and then purge it.
We can just export everything to our archived database, and
and if they really wanted to bring it back, we could. I know that does mess with reporting, like if they ever wanted to go back, but
if they wanted to go back,
they're not looking at reports from 10 years ago more than
right. That's what I was saying. It's like, is it really? But yeah, I mean, yeah, I guess, yeah, maybe possibly that we could figure out that problem. I think the only thing this particular client has is they have some legal requirements associated to the data that they keep. So there very well may be a reason they keep it for 5 years past a client closing out, but I can't imagine things being much longer than that. And they literally have they probably have stuff from 20 years ago, to be honest with you.
I mean, in reality, we just don't think about that when we're building an application. The client I work on is going through that same thing where they've had data around for 20 years. Yeah. And finally, it was just a year and a half, 2 years ago, where they kept complaining about the S3 bucket size growing and never shrinking. And it's like, well, we never delete any data. So they finally talked to their legal counsel and they came up with a data retention policy where once you cancel, I think it's a year after you cancel, we purge everything. We keep a shell of your account, so you could log back in, but all of your contacts are gone. All of any voicemails you may have had, any recorded calls you may have had, have all been cleaned up.
Yeah. Yeah. So I've always talked about, you didn't mention that, and I don't have a lot to discuss either, so we can just kind of blow through this. But um, you know, I've always felt like SQL SQL is one of those things where I'm dependent on a GUI. I've gotten better. I've definitely gotten better over the last few years as far as understanding how to talk SQL and get data out how I want it, but I'm still not efficient with it. And a lot of that has always been like the database to me has just been something like I don't want to deal with. I mean, I store my data, leave me alone, sort of thing. And also, I mean, until I started working at the dev, actually the job rep for that. My previous big job, we had an entire DBA team, which wouldn't let you touch the database. So I was very accustomed to not having access or not having to do things directly in the database. But as I started learning PHP and started developing in PHP, everything was back then a LAMP stack, right? It was the Apache and MySQL, and I always used MySQL. But I always flirt with Postgres. We just talked about this last week, actually, with Laravel Cloud. Like the default database for Laravel Cloud was Postgres databases. You could do a Laravel you could do a MySQL database, but it was very much in beta or whatever they called it. So Postgres, and like so many other languages, Postgres is like the default database to go to. And I always struggled understanding why. And a few people have explained it. And I guess originally there was a pretty big gap between Postgres and MySQL. But that gap has shrunk more and more. But every now and then I find a video where I'm like, okay, now I gotta try Postgres. It's like because they seem to have cool tools until I think through it. And I shared a video with you this week. Did you get a chance to watch it?
I did. Yep.
What did you think of it?
It's compelling. It makes you want to
see. It's compelling, and I always ask myself. So I'll tell you what the most compelling part is, and it could be a bad part. So let me. If you're not subscribed to PHP Architect's YouTube channel, you should do that first. But after you subscribe to PHP Arch, you should subscribe to Flagship, which is another great YouTube channel that just talks about a bunch of coding stuff. They have one here called I Replaced My Entire Tech Stack, not database, their entire tech stack with Postgres. Now, I am not looking to do that for sure. But they have some very compelling conversation points around Postgres. And this is my biggest crutch that I always reach for when I engage with a tool that I don't always regret, but I have a tendency to go overboard. So I'm not going to play this whole thing.
Tools that solve every problem. And technically,
this whole video is under 10 minutes, so it's
never been easier to build a billion typos. So Postgres actually has built a library called electric GraphQL extents and break it up into a bunch of smaller parts. Then we can create a generalized inverted index for better performance, which gives us the ability to then rank and query the most likely results from the data using double @ which is the text search sign a token on the server. And now that we have that, we can implement robots.
Anyways, what?
I say mute it while you're looking for whatever you're looking for.
You don't tell me what to do. You're not my boss, but I can appreciate what you're saying. It was a little congestive. So one of the cool things, so they talk about a lot of different things that Postgres does. Some of it, I think MySQL does now. But the coolest thing is, and I didn't even know this was a thing, is that Postgres, first, you can create plugins for Postgres, and there's this whole plugin community out there. And I forget, that's what I was looking for. I was trying to find the example that they use for.
They use the vector databases one, building like an LLM within it.
Yeah. And if you know me with Vim, if you know me with PHP Storm, first thing I do is reach for extensions. I'm like an extension plugin maniac because that's, I want it to do as much work for me as possible. I've gotten better at cutting back and making sure I really need something. But just knowing that it has that now, it's just like, okay, wait a minute. That's cool. It has like I guess it has and I don't think this was an extension. I would have to go back and watch the video again. I strongly recommend you guys go watch this video. Matter of fact, have I put it in Trello yet? I have not. Coming in Trello right now. He goes through like everything you use as a separate part of your stack. And one of the things he talked about was Redis. Like a lot of people use Redis, but Postgres has a key value store built into it. It's like, wait, what?
I mean, technically so does MySQL. I mean, it's a database, right?
Yeah.
So you do the same thing. You could do the same thing with MySQL with a in-memory database.
And that's the thing. Like, like I said, that gap has decreased a lot. And I think, but the thing is like, like your Redis could go down and it doesn't mean your whole application is down. But in Postgres, like if your key value store is down, your Postgres is probably down and you're kind of screwed, So
but usually you need them both at the same time. Usually one doesn't work without the other.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess without Redis, it
works
should work
the other.
If it's seriously just your cache. Right. We end up using Redis for way more than just a cache.
Yeah, but I mean, even then, you probably use it hey, see if this record's in Redis if it's not created, right?
Not with some of the data. Some of the data, it's like that is the database.
That's what I used to do a lot. Like we build out these trees of information, and I would have a cron job that was building it in Redis, and then when somebody went to query it, it would say, "Hey, is this data in Redis? If not, all right, you have to build it." Yeah, I don't know, man. I just always feel like I'm missing something with Postgres. Like so many people use Postgres, and I don't know, man. I feel like I'm missing something.
People that really understand databases really push Postgres over MySQL.
Yeah, but nobody can explain to me why. Like nobody can explain to me why. So I don't know, man.
So Joe was talking about stored procedures here, and that actually came up today when I was talking about the routing of phone calls, and it was making a query to a database. That the person said, "Would you like to create a stored procedure? That way I didn't have to go to them for that logic, and we didn't have to do you didn't have to do a code change per se. You just change it in the database, the stored procedure, and you're good to go." And somebody on the team said, "We're adverse to stored procedures here." I'm like, "No, we're not, because we have them everywhere in our database. We have stored procedures and triggers throughout." Even though people complain about it, and I agree with what Joe's saying, having those things makes it hard sometimes to understand how data is flowing through your database, or why things are set in a certain way, how things work. But it is super convenient to have.
I mean, it wouldn't be that terrible if... So, like CouchDB, right? CouchDB doesn't have it's a document store. It doesn't have a SQL interface. It's not ACID compliant either. I guess that's kind of on the fence now, depending on your definition of ACID compliant. Anyways, I'm getting over it. But to do any sort of to easily replicate queries, essentially, like if you know you need a certain data set, the easiest way to do is to define these views, which is basically the way I process it in my head is it's a stored procedure, right? You do all the upfront work to kind of get the data, then you just make a call to that view, and then you have the data. So, I mean, I guess you can use stored procedures for more than just viewing, just more than the read. And I think there could be an argument made, like you said, how that data is changing and what's changing it. Yeah, I can see that. I think it's a valid conversation to have.
I concur.
Oh man! So, do you? How long you been coding, John?
How long have I been coding? Depends on what you call coding. So,
how long have you been doing web development work professionally?
Web development, I started in 99.
99. Good time.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's take a quick break. Let's hear from our good friends over at Honey Badger. Actually, we'll hear from John. John's got a little story to tell us.
Let me tell you a quick story about our sponsor, honeybadger.io. One time, a customer of theirs had a background job run overnight that caused hundreds of thousands of errors to be reported to Honeybadger by mistake. Like many other error tracking and performance monitoring tools, Honeybadger bills for monthly usage, and so this customer's mistake was going to cost them a lot of extra money that month. If you've ever used a monitoring service, you might have experienced something like this. Well, fortunately for this customer, they emailed Honeybadger's support and received the most amazing reply. Honeybadger was resetting their monthly quota and canceling their bill. This is just one example of how much the small team at Honeybadger cares about their users. Ask anyone you know and you'll hear similar stories. Go check them out at honeybadger.io. It's free to get started and setup takes less than 5 minutes. Don't forget to bookmark it. That's www.honeybadger.io. Thank you,
Badger. All right. So you've been coding web development. Sorry, were you going to say something?
I was going to clarify when I said depends on what you call coding. I started basic way back when I was like 10 years old, like back in the late 80s.
Yeah. Oh, God, you're only 10 in the 80s. Jesus. Oh, man. I'm getting too old for this job. God damn it.
All right.
So you probably remember quite fondly of building something for the web and either requiring a certain browser to use it or realizing that, hey, this isn't working on all browsers. Right? Browser wars, basically, right?
Yeah.
We had Mozilla back
IE
then.
versus everybody else.
Yeah, IE versus everything. Mozilla. Who was the other big one? I guess Safari made it.
Netscape.
Well, that was Mozilla, wasn't it? Or it was Navigator. Netscape Navigator was before Mozilla. That's true. Yeah. But yeah, as a matter of fact, the place I worked at is all right, we'll get into that in a second. But it was frustrating as a developer. It was frustrating, especially when Microsoft went so far off when standards were trying to be defined. Like it was the early period of defining standards on the web, and Microsoft just basically said, fuck y'all, ActiveX, use it and piss off, right? So that was frustrating, and something would work in all your browsers, and then Navigator would come out with a release, and all of a sudden like half your page wouldn't load in Navigator, and you'd have to figure that out. It's been a long time since we've been there. There's still a little bit of it. We actually experienced that with the first year of tech, and we noticed we discovered that Firefox rendered SVGs differently than pretty much everybody else. Chrome, which is everybody else, in Safari. But it wasn't that big of a deal. I mean, that was minor, right? And basically the site worked. We're experiencing that today, and it is infuriating to me right now.
Really?
And I'm not sure why. So we have it's not web, well, kind of web adjacent. So we have a mobile developer. We use an Ionic Cordova framework, depending on what application we're dealing with. And we have this one particular application that's been around for years. The current mobile developer actually has very little experience with it. As a matter of fact, we tried to get his development environment up and running, and that was like a 3-day ordeal to get him even to a point where he could build it locally and troubleshoot it. But no code changes to the application, no code changes to the API endpoints that feed the mobile application. So we've already got multiple layers. Yet this application was displaying these very weird behaviors that initially was difficult to replicate, but I kind of nailed that down today, and I got it to a point where it could be replicated. But so these are mobile apps, and almost, so our client has multiple customers that use this mobile app, and almost across the board, within a week, they were all reporting the same error. And we've been troubleshooting it, and it's one of these things, I don't know where to start here, because at the time we couldn't get it to replicate. And also, we hadn't touched the damn database, or the code base. We hadn't touched anything for it to break. But in troubleshooting today, we discovered that, I guess, Android had let out an update to their hardware. And all the hardware, all the mobile apps that were on the current hardware were busting. And it's like, son of a bitch. So it's got to be like either a permissions issue with the way we're caching the data, or I keep going back to that. It's got to be some sort of permission issue with the way we're caching the data. And I'm hoping, now that I've got it to a point where we can replicate it, our developer will be able to figure it out and get it resolved. It's just irritating because now we got to push an update to a legacy application that we thought we were done with. Matter of fact, that developer is working on that application's replacement. And it's like, we're like almost crossing the finish line. Like we have our client is thoroughly testing everything and signing off on everything and making these little tweaks. Like, we're so close to being done now. It's just like, just be finished so we can push this out. And it just can't come soon enough. And it's just like, oh my, and the moment that happened, the moment I was able to replicate it, and I realized that, oh yeah, it's breaking on this version of Android, but not this version. I just got PTSD of like the browser wars. I'm like, God damn it, I remember this. Because it's like out of your control. You didn't have control over those releases back then, just like you don't have control over your mobile release. And
so you were able to replicate just by upgrading Android?
No, so there's a very particular workflow that has to be followed. So you can upgrade Android. You can log into the application just fine. You can actually shut the application, log back in, shut the application, log back in, not have an issue. It's when you try to do a certain function in that application and it finds a result. There's no indication that there's a problem. The application works fine, but when you close that application and try to reopen it, it gets hung up in this, meta. It's trying to fetch metadata, basically, which is, us saying we have data in the database we're trying to reestablish. So yeah, it's these very particular steps. It was very difficult to troubleshoot because some devices it was working, some devices it wasn't. Some people could log in and out without an issue, but they weren't taking that other step of working through a particular workflow. But yeah, I'm hoping we've made some progress. And it's just such a nightmare. And it's worse, right? It's worse for me. That particular area for our company is the most stressful because hands down across the board, I'm the absolute weakest of everybody we employ. I'm the weakest when it comes to JavaScript. And that's basically what this application is. That's what that Ionic framework is. It's just a JavaScript framework for mobile development. And I am so bad at that. And it frustrates me because I feel like if I knew what I was looking for, I could figure this out quicker, which I guess, it's a stupid comment.
Sounds like you figured it out. So,
well, I figured out how to I figured out how to break it, John. I'm good at breaking shit. Like I could figure out how I broke it.
That's often half the freaking problem. If you can figure out how to replicate it, then you can fix it afterwards.
Yeah.
So you did the hard part.
I think so. I hope so. I really hope this gets fixed. And I feel bad again for the mobile developer because they haven't touched this code base. They don't want to touch this code base. You know, it's just legacy.
I love their comments. You just hired me, but do you think you can hire somebody else to work on the legacy stuff while I continue working on the new stuff? Nah, that's not how it works.
As I said, like everybody on this team works on legacy code. Yours is just mobile. Suck it up, Buttercup.
So there was a link shared in Discord earlier today that there was an RCE, a remote code execution path through Livewire Vault. And, I was curious. I'm like, I want to know more. So I immediately start clicking through and it says it was patched in 1.7. So I go to click on code there. I then go over and I click on the 1.7 on the right. Down at the bottom on the right. Under releases.
Mm-hmm.
And then you can click on compare in the top right. And 167. Gotta up that 167. So I do this and I'm like, I'm curious what changed. And there's only 2 files here, a changelog and a composer. I'm like, there's nothing here. And then no, the actual RCE is in Livewire itself.
Tricky little girl.
Yes. So if you're using Livewire, please make sure it's updated. The crux of it is you can upload a PHP file with a MIME type of image PNG. Livewire will think it's a PNG file and store it on a server, and now you have a PHP file there that can be executed.
Holy shit! I'm not so you're uploading the file, but you have the PNG extension on it, even though it's a PHP file.
No, you're uploading a PHP file with a MIME type of PNG. So you're telling
MIME type of okay,
right?
gotcha.
You're telling Livewire, hey, this is an image/PNG file. It just happens to be called shell.php. And then Livewire was taking that and then allowing you to store it.
Oh man, good God. Talk about old school. We were just talking about old school stuff, man.
I've done stupid stuff like that.
So have I.
It's not I'm sad that it's happened. I don't feel bad for Caleb in that, but we've all done it. We all do our best and mistakes happen, but at least they let us know they fixed it. Just make sure you upgrade.
So now I want to see what the fix is. That was 361. Let's compare it to 360. Files, only 3 files changed.
Yeah.
So readme, actions MD, and right here must be the issue. Oh, that's actions. That's all actions. Here's the code right here. Base utility. And property. Oh, interesting. All right. Fun stuff with Livewire. All right. Cool, man. Oh, excellent. Yeah, I saw that come in. I think, did Steve post that or was that Michael? Somebody posted. I thought it was one of our team.
It was Mike.
It was Michael. Yeah. That was one of our team members.
Yeah.
Quite the little crew now, man. I'm loving how active the team is getting in the community or have been in the community, I mean, Frank's always kind of been like, it's always been like you, me, and Frank, and Kaylin would pop in, but Kaylin's like on a whole different hour time slot now. So
he's on a different continent.
Yeah. So yeah, it's nice to see more. We got Joe on the team now. Joe's always been a big part of the community. He's just now part of the team, and yeah, Steve's doing a great job. So yeah, it's been fun. I'm liking it.
I learned something new today.
Lay it on me, brother.
Do you have any lazy ghosts in your code?
All my ghosts are lazy. I'm a lazy guy in general. What's a lazy ghost?
So I knew that PHP 8.4 was it 8.4 or 8.3 added lazy objects. I think it's 8.4.
8.4. No, I think it was 8.3. Maybe 8.4. I don't know. Go ahead.
Anyway, added the ability to produce lazy objects. I just never looked into it close enough. But there's actually
there.
Two different types of lazy objects. There are lazy ghosts and lazy proxies. And
I think we talked about this when it came out.
Oh, I know we talked about lazy objects. I just didn't, like I said, I didn't deep dive into the difference between a ghost and or I did, and then I completely forgot about it, and I saw lazy ghost, and I'm like, what the hell is that? So I decided to start reading and thought I would share.
I'm pretty sure you had explained this to me. Actually, I think we did this live, and you were looking at it and explained it to me.
Yeah.
So explain it to me again, because I haven't looked at this. I don't know.
Yeah, basically it boils down to I have a terrible memory and forgot talking about this in the past. Yeah, using reflection, you can create a lazy ghost, which is your object just not initialized at that point in time, that you can pass around as that object.
Right. This sounds familiar.
Right. And then the lazy proxy is, I think, a subclass of that object. You can't necessarily pass it around quite the same way. The instantiation is a little bit different. And then I think I haven't used it yet, so I'm not speaking very well about it. But the big thing is you can't use a lazy proxy or a lazy ghost in code that you don't have control over. So that's their big thing.
So it's always things like this where I get like frustrated. It's like, well, why are you giving me so many options? Like, why? What are the use cases? Like, where's that delineator for me where I say, oh, I'm going to use a ghost here and a proxy
if you
here.
keep scrolling down, it will tell you under about lazy object strategies. Right there.
Ghosts are objects that initialize in place and once initialized are indistinguishable from an object that was never lazy. Okay, so you create the lazy object, you have this object you're passing around, but it's not loaded, right? You're not done anything. And then the moment you initialize it, it's just an object at that point.
Right. So if you go back up to that example 1, basically you're getting this example object without the constructor being called. And then as soon as you go to use it, it's going to call object underscore construct. So it will pass what is needed into the constructor at this point in time.
Which is basically in my head how I relate the word lazy. Like whenever you use any sort of lazy object, or I just called it an object, but yeah, any sort of lazy method, that's what it's doing. It's creating that placeholder, but it doesn't actually execute anything until you request data from it.
Right, until you go to use it.
Okay, so what's the about lazy? Where'd that go? Where'd that go?
Right there. You went too far. Keep going up. It was
okay. So lazy proxies, once initialized, act as a proxy to the real instance. The operation on the initialized lazy proxy is forwarded to the real instance. The creation of the real instance can be delegated to another party, making this strategy useful in classes where lazy ghosts are unsuitable. Although lazy proxies are nearly as transparent as lazy ghosts, caution is needed when their identity is used, as a lazy proxy is real instance, and its real instance has not have distinct identities.
And it's real. So they're not the same object anymore. So once it's initialized, it's now a new object because you're getting back literally a new instantiation of that class.
But why would that be different than just newing up a new class to another variable? Like,
It's not. So it's when you need to accept a class of example in this case.
Mhm.
So you get that example, but then as soon as you do anything on it, you now have a new version of that. So you were passed in version 1, and as soon as you use it, you actually have and will be using version 2. Even the identity is not the same.
Got it.
You're literally returning new example 1 here. Why you don't just new it up in that code? Remember, this is third-party code where you're sending it in. They may not have all the data it needs to create this object. So you're doing it in your lazy creation, getting what it needs, and will fill it out at that point in time as soon as that consuming code goes to use your class. I shouldn't say that. I should open a pull request to change the example codes a little bit to make it a little more clear. Because using an example class with just an integer value like that, it's like, this is stupid. Because in this case, it's just like a value object. I think that option example 3 may be a little more clear, but.
And if you're not aware, by the way, and we could do it if we had the time, but you can actually update this code now and run it, and the output will show down here. So like if I change, what do I want to change here? Yeah, I mean I would have to change all that.
Just in the echo method, you could put something else in that. Before
yeah, I could do that.
Or just in the string literal. That's fine too.
No, you're right. I should just do it over here. Okay, and then hit run. Boop. Come down here and hello. So yeah, kind of cool. All right, yeah. I'm gonna have to find myself in a position where I'm like, oh yeah, that's right. John told me about this proxy lazy thing I should look into. This is why you want to go to tech. This is why you want to go to PHP Tech right here. I'm going to take this opportunity to pitch PHP Tech to everybody. Conference is coming up. We're in the first week of March still, so not too far off. Let me update this to phptech.io. These sort of questions, I can guarantee you're going to run into somebody at PHP Tech who has needed this. Hell, you might even run into the person who built that function in PHP internals. It's a very real thing that happens all the time. But most certainly you'll run into somebody who understands it, even if they haven't used it. So if you haven't gotten your ticket for PHP Tech yet, please do so. We have some fun stuff happen. This is Tony. His name now is officially Tony. It will be the elephant we're giving away to all attendees at PHP Tech this year. So, I mean, you're basically recouping your costs right there, because these things will go on eBay for like $600-700. I have a feeling. I don't know. Yeah, don't hold me to that. But yeah, fun stuff. Great time. Great group of people to be around. Just a fun few days of PHP across the platform. I had a discussion with somebody, and the one thing they said is there's not enough Laravel there for me, and I'm kind of like, okay, well, what's enough Laravel? How many Laravel talks did you submit? And because we have, or in the past we have. I don't think I've actually tallied it up to this year, but we will typically have a heavy showing of Laravel. What we don't have a lot of is like Symfony and WordPress specific talks. but we almost always have Laravel specific talks. And that's the strength of this conference. If you're a Laravel person, is learning things outside of your echo chamber of Laravel and realizing how other people using other platforms, using other frameworks, are just using straight up PHP, how they're solving problems that you might have in your Laravel application. And not to mention, like, there's all these other tangential sort of topics like value objects and databases, and that aren't specific to Laravel itself. So please, if you're a Laravel person, there's no reason to write off PHP tech. It's beneficial for everybody. I can promise you that.
I agree. I've decided we need to have A-Woods on our magazine prep committee to come up with the titles for the magazine.
A-Woods for the magazine, yeah. Not only it's the titles, but for the covers.
Yeah.
Let's pull up this month's actually. phparch.com. I actually like this month's. I like this. I don't know if it's a style or what it is, but this we pay a little homage to Grumpy. Oh, wrong browser window. A little homage to Grumpy. Grumpy. Chris is starting a new column with us called Yelling at Clouds, and that's just what we call it. We didn't call the whole magazine Yelling at Clouds because we're lazy, and we realized a cloud cover would be very easy. No, that's not why we did it. Just seemed good timing. But yeah, A-Woods would be a perfect person to come up with titles and cover ideas for the magazine. Might have to recruit him for that. Oh man,
definitely need to
work on this month's. We've got a good start on this month, man. We got February's out before the last day of the month, which was fantastic, and we are just cranking along for this month.
We have a good start to March, although
I think you're a little ballsy. So we had somebody reach out. This is actually a pretty common question for the conference, which honestly we hadn't even decided whether or not we would 100% give away a print version of the magazine at the conference, because there is a cost incurred, but we most definitely probably will. But like, what issue will be released? Will we have for? So the conference is in May. It won't be the May one because we hadn't finished, putting that one together. Ideally, it's the April one, and John was pretty quick to tell the speaker, "Oh yeah, it'll be the April one,"
because we had already told the columnist that like a month ago.
You have a lot of faith in the columnist, man. I'm telling you.
That was the whole point. Like, tell them, hey, we're giving away the April. And I got to go back and see when I said that because it's not like I just made that decision yesterday.
To be fair, I mean, last year we gave away the March one, which was, our conference was in April last year, so that made sense. And I think the first year we gave away the April one, so it's just a ballsy statement to make. I'm trying to give us some like breathing rooms. Like, well, we're going to try for April, but it very, very well might be March. Yeah, we just need because it's not a matter. I mean, even if they give us their column the last day of the month, which don't fucking do that, guys. But us putting together the digital version is not terrible. It's pretty quick. It's the print version because, I mean, ideally we let it bake for a little while. We might do that. Might not let it bake so long for the April one, but ideally we let it bake for a little while because people ping us and say, "Oh, hey, there's a problem with this code snippet, or there's this issue." And so we like to get it as correct as possible before sending it off to the printers. And we don't do that. That's a service we engage with. We send it off to them. We have to sign off on it. There's a little back and forth with them, and then they start printing, and then they have to ship it out. So it's always stressful when there's like, I just thought that was a very ballsy statement to make. I'm glad you made it because I didn't.
Got to stay on top of it. Get it done.
The contributors are getting there. Like the new contributors we brought on are already getting into the pattern of the due date. And I think the existing contributors are getting to a point where they're starting to get there too. So it's nice. I'm happy with it. And the reason we do that, just so you know, is a lot of times the contributors are either speakers or they want to write something that is pertinent to PHP tag. So it's I get it. I get why the question's out there, and I appreciate it when they do it, but it's just stressful. I'm a stressful guy.
We'll make it happen.
Yeah, we will.
Don't
worry. Have to now. You already said it would. All right. Where are we at on time? Oh, dude, we're over, baby.
Yeah, we're good. We are good. I was going to look to see. Look, we've already got 4 articles for April.
Is that including features? Because that doesn't count if it includes features.
1 feature.
Okay, so we only got 3, right? 3 columnists. So
yeah. I'm
not going to call you out. You have another dev community article here. I didn't get a chance to read it. I'm curious what it says. Did you read it?
Which one?
In your Trello, the other dev community one. Oh, they're both dev community. The lower one.
No, I didn't.
Okay, we'll save that maybe for next week. That's why I asked.
It's been on my list now for 3 weeks and I haven't looked at it.
Oh, has it?
Yeah.
Oh shit! I need to look at it because I just don't understand. I don't understand what it could be referring to. I mean, yeah. Okay, I'll have to look at it. We will cover it next week for sure.
Okay, let's do that.
Oh, all right. Yeah. I think that's going to do it. If you're not a subscriber to the magazine, please subscribe to the magazine. It really doesn't do much for us as a company as a whole, although we do appreciate it. But it does allow us to employ the columnists who write for us, do nice things for the community, all that. So make sure you subscribe at very least to the digital magazine. It's not that expensive. I would love to say that cost is going to go down, but John just basically refuses. I've tried. He says no, but I'll keep bugging him. But it's not expensive anyways. And then if you want that little extra perk, the print, I tell you, man, I'm always surprised how many people aren't aware of the print version of the magazine. But the quality of this thing, just so you know, when we took over PHP Architect, the first thing I tried to do was find a service that would let me cut back on the quality of this magazine, because it is way, way too nice for a coding magazine. Like this is like GQ quality magazine as far as like the paper and everything, the colors go. But I have not been able to do that. So that's why the print version, the cost is what it is. I understand it is a splurge, so try to get your bosses to pay for it. That's always the easiest way to go. You can always justify that. But check it out. And if you happen to be at Scale, so Scale, Southern California Linux Expo kicked off yesterday. I have not actually been there. I'm going to drive there. It's over in Pasadena. I'm going to head over there tomorrow. But if you happen to run into me and you happen to be at Scale, if that 1 or 2 people just happen to be listening to this podcast, come up to me. I will have, I'm taking some print copies of the magazine with me. So if you walk up to me and say, hey, I'm a fan of PHP Architect and the PHP podcast, can I have a magazine? I will give you a magazine and autograph it. No.
They're gonna be like, why'd you ruin this perfectly good magazine?
What's wrong with you, man? What's it said, Erica? The point of tech is exposure to general PHP coding, concept tools. Yep. Laravel serves as a needs for Laravel. I'm telling you, man, Laravel. I'm not knocking Laravel, and I'm not knocking the Laravel ecosystem. But like Laravel, to me, feels very much more like a product conference, which it is, right? It's Laravel, right? I mean, there's nothing wrong with that. It doesn't feel as community as PHP Tech is. And again, PHP Tech is not a product. We at PHP Architect fund it and throw it, but we don't, push our stuff on you guys. It's just there. Matter of fact, we give most of our stuff away there. Yeah, PHP or Laravel is if Laravel is your world, you definitely should be attending Laravel. Although I had this conversation, and I'll repeat it here again. Not knocking Laravel. I go to Laravel every year since I started going. I do have people who I consider part of my friend circle, so community, I guess, that I like to run into there and have conversations and catch up. But Laravel to me, the last couple of years, because I've been using Laravel for so long and I have it deployed in so many places, Laravel to me is like, okay, cool, that's what's happening. We're just going to let that cook for about 6 months, 7 months. I'm not looking to implement that anytime soon. It's not changing anything I'm working on. I definitely have gotten a lot less excited. I think Livewire was the last thing where I was like, I could use this today. Where I left a Laravel thinking I can go home and start implementing this in some websites. But for the most part, most of the stuff that's talked about is just things that you need to keep in mind when moving forward. Like, oh yeah, when they upgrade Laravel, we need to keep an eye on this stuff, or we'll have this feature available to us. So PHP Tech is definitely a more, I don't want to say enjoyable. Enjoyable is the wrong word, but
it's community
focused. Yeah, community. So yeah, check it out. And again, if you're at Scale this weekend by chance, which I do know one of our speakers at Tech this year will be at Scale. I ran into him last year and scared the hell out of him.
And if you're having trouble getting your company to pay for it, for just an extra $100, I don't know why we went so cheap. For an extra $100, you can become a community sponsor, and your business or your employer can get their logo on our website as a community sponsor. Link back to their application or their business from our website. So
yes, 100%. Like I said, this is not a PHP Architect conference, so we are 100% looking for sponsorship. Still, we'll look for sponsorship up until the day before. But if you want to get your company's logo and all the material and on all the signs, they need to step up here fairly soon, because that's just how it works. Like after a certain date, we have to start printing things out, and if it's not there, it's not there. So yeah, have your people reach out to us, and we'll send you a prospectus, or just what the best thing to do is they can just say, we don't need a prospectus. Here's a bucket of money. Enjoy.
I'll take a wheelbarrow full of pennies.
We are okay with that. Yeah, we're good with that. That's what we should do. You know what we should do, John? I'm stating this here. So like I said, we're going to change the sponsorship tiers next year. I feel like I've already, had a conversation with John about this, just because I think we're trying to do too much with our sponsorship tiers. But I do think next year what we should offer is one of the sponsorship tiers, or offer a sponsorship tier. That company gets 5 digital subscriptions to the magazine for their employees. Because if they're there, then obviously PHP is part of their, focus point. And so why not share that? Like, why not give them something throughout the year? Say, okay, for being this sponsor, here's 5 digital copies of the magazine you can give out to your employees. We give out, I don't want to say give out, we include digital copies of the magazine for a lot of reasons. We do appreciate people who subscribe. I mean, that's just the easiest way to ensure you're going to get the magazine. But yeah, we try to get it out there as much as possible, because there's been some great people in the community who make that happen and contribute columns every month. So, all right, I'm getting all sloppy. I need to wrap it up.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks everybody for hanging out with us. It's been a good show. Enjoyed it. Next week we're good, right? No, nothing holding us up next week. Next Thursday is going to suck for me.
Why is that?
Client meetings and client vendor meetings. It's just shaping up to be a bad day for me, but we'll make it happen. Okay, thanks everybody for hanging out with us. Until next week. Bye.
Bye.
This has been PHP Podcast, the official podcast of PHP Architect, the industry's leading tech magazine and publisher, focused on PHP and web development. Subscribe today at phparch.com to see what the leaders in the community and industry are talking about.